Hey, Sean, I know Patrick Surtain.
I'll come back and check in.
It's been a bit since he's had a takeaway, an interception or a fumble recovery, but it seems to me as though he's had everything to do with this rash of takeaways that you guys have had over the last 5 or 6 weeks. The way you're able to position him and sort of funnel the ball certain ways. Is that a correct assessment?
Yeah, I'd say part of it is um, it makes for a good story. I think this. I would say a couple things. Number one, he's an outstanding cover corner who's got great length. Certainly, because of that, the stress falls on the corner opposite of him. Now, depending on what coverage you're in, the ball can go inside. When I say that, if you're playing more of a shell, um, but I would say, look, the takeaways have been a group result relative to, punch outs, strips, uh, getting everyone to the ball, awareness of them. And so I'd like to say schematically, because we know they're going away from Patrick, they're coming over here. But I think there's a little bit more to it than just that. There's effort, there's intelligence that's involved when you're trying to take the ball away, and then obviously pressure on the quarterback. I think there are other things that are a byproduct of maybe what he does so well. I mean, I think he only had 2 catches yesterday. When he takes the number one player away, does the quarterback hold on to the ball longer? Some of those things may be byproducts of it, but man, he's playing at a high level. Each week he sees the best they have, and that's not an easy task. And he's answered the challenge.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, Sean, I'm curious if in all your time in the league, it seems to say something about your defensive guys and your staff, but you've given up fewer touchdowns in the last 6 games than you did in Miami. And I'm just curious where that turnaround sort of stands with you, and can you even look at something like that in the middle of a season?
Yeah, look, there's a turnaround certainly and a change, and then we're going to be able to reference Miami in a bunch of different ways for the rest of our lives. It seems like, relative to, well, you did this twice as good as. But to your point, though, I think the first thing I would say, statistically speaking, when we were at 1-5 and then post 1-5, we've protected the ball better, taken it away better. We've defended the run better defensively, and I think we're playing a better complementary brand of football. We're playing extremely well in the kicking game. We look for those opportunities. Both our punt and kick return units are first in the NFL. And so you start chipping away, and you look at a game like yesterday and you say, all right, you're going to win the rushing battle, third down battle, red zone battle, and you're going to win the turnover battle. See, 2 weeks ago at Minnesota, we didn't win those others, and we only win that game because we won the turnover battle. Where yesterday, we did some of those other things that I alluded to in the post game conference. So I would say, back to your question relative to the difference from that early part of the season start to where we're at now, I think is defending the run, and then the turnover ratio is dramatically different. I would guess it's first in the league since that 1-5 start.
Go ahead, Andrew. Andrew, can you hear us? Okay, we're going to go to Brandon Cristal. Brandon, can you hear us?
Yeah, I got you. Got me?
Go ahead, yes.
Well, Coach, I'm just curious, every coach and every player wants to exude confidence, but when you are 1-5, and you kind of ended talking about that, and you want to keep on course, did you and your staff believe that you would have this kind of run and this turnaround, I guess, this quickly? Because I imagine at 1-5, it's good to hope that, but that's not always going to, come to fruition.
I think at 1-5, it's not. Well, we can get to 6-5. It's getting the second win, and then maybe drawing some examples of what we have to do to begin to. So I don't think you're looking that far ahead, and I don't think any one of us look with the idea that, hey, we're going to win the next 5. That's not. It's about winning that week, that next game, that next unit, which I think was Green Bay, and then the next one, and then pretty soon, So I think, it was just you're relying on your leadership and guys rolling up their sleeves and getting ready to go to work. That's the only way that I know how to dig out, and so I think you credit the team for doing that.
Go ahead, Parker.
Hey, Sean, you talked last week, I think, about sort of getting to know the teams in the AFC and who to root for and who not to. Obviously, you and Houston are both 6-5 going into this weekend. Do you spend any time with your team talking about, the being tied and being right in the picture? I guess, how do you approach that part of the equation?
Yeah.
With your guys?
You guys will handle that for me. I know you will. I'm just focused on what it is. What do we have to do to win this game? I say that because it's that time of the year, and rightfully so. Where, hey, there's a list of others, and so when the game yesterday was probably very similar, right? It was a 7-3 AFC team, but it's still about you winning. In other words, we're playing. We could be playing an NFC team, and yet it's still a unit, and it matters. And it just so happens you're playing an AFC team that's a contender, and so you could say it's worth a little bit more, but it's still about here and what we're doing here during the work week as we prepare to play, and so we put ourselves in a position where each of these games becomes more and more important, but the focus has to be strictly on this one, and I think it kind of is what it is.
Go ahead, Eric.
Coach, just to kind of follow up on that, how have you seen the guys in the locker room buy into that small focus, that one game at a time sort of approach here at this time of year?
Well, I know it's cliche, the one game at a time, but my point is, I think I think it's so important to just immerse yourself on the things you can control, and the things you can't control, then, man, let's not waste any battery life on those things, and so, we got first of a handful of road games coming up. We're playing in Houston. The game's been moved up, so it's 12 noon start time. We're going to be practicing in and around about that time during the whole week. We practice at 12 noon. In other words, here's the forecast. We got an indoor environment. Here's the surface. I'll put the Houston logo heads on the field. We're playing on the road, a team that's young, talented. They came off a tough loss this past weekend. And here are the facts about who we're playing. And then, all right, what do we have to do to play well in this game, and then kind of go from there. But to your questions, and a handful of you have asked, I've not put, for instance, the AFC chart on a PowerPoint and said, all right, here's where it's at, here's what we need. I just haven't done that because I don't know that helps, and I don't know that it's nothing that I don't think any of these players don't already know. These games are important. When you dig yourself in a hole at the start of the season, then there's a little less wiggle room, down the stretch.
Go ahead, Zach.
Hey, Coach, there's been weeks where Russ has run for 40 or 50 yards, and there's weeks where he doesn't run at all. Is that something that's going to take place one or the other during the week, or is that something that plays out in a game? And how important is that to have a quarterback that has the ability to scramble and run?
No, it's a good question. I would say this was a week. There have been weeks where he's had 30 yards or whatnot, and I wouldn't have guessed whether he would or he wouldn't have. This was a week that I would have guessed he was going to have good rushing yards because there were a number of good examples of zone reads. the way their ends played, the way they played defensively, we kind of felt like that package of offensive plays that gave him opportunities to run were going to be really good, and they were called yesterday. And so this was one of the first games where going into the game, I would have said, hey, he's going to have a positive impact rushing the football.
Go ahead, Nick.
Hey, Sean, it seems like every week we're seeing DJ Jones do something that maybe not a lot of guys his size are doing. I come to mind a play in space he made against Buffalo out on the edge. Obviously yesterday. What's just been your impression as you've gotten to know him and work with him this year about what he's bringing to the table?
Yeah, a couple things. Look, we competed against him when he was in San Francisco. The two things now that, I've been around him is he's very athletic and he's got really good football IQ, and those traits can serve you well, especially when you bring up some plays or examples of plays. Good football instincts and athletic for an inside tackle.
Go ahead, Troy.
Coach, the way that your offenses work, you've been physical, you run the heck out of the ball, and you've been so efficient in the red zone, particularly Russell Wilson. What have you seen with his decision-making regarding the red zone specifically? I mean, his efficiency there is off the charts.
Well, let's back up a second. We haven't been good in the red zone. We were good yesterday, but we haven't been. We were near the bottom third of the league as a unit. Yesterday, we were better. As it pertains to Russell, look, he's measured just like our offense is. I thought he did a good job with decisions down there. He had the scramble throw to Troutman for a touchdown. Ryan gets a touchdown. Russell gets a touchdown yesterday off a zone read. But it's an area that we consistently have to work on, pay attention to, and improve in.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, Sean, your affinity for Adam Troutman goes back to, I think you traded almost the back end of your draft to move up and get him a few years ago.
Stop. Let me correct you. Stop.
Okay.
Stop. We flipped
All right.
picks at the end of the draft. You ready? Not the back end of the draft. That would be what we do if we want good television ratings. All right. We flop picks at the back of the draft.
All right.
All right. You get, and we acquired a player we had a vision for. All right. I have an affinity for all of the players we kept on this roster, but we're not talking about Kellen Winslow here. All right. So at the end of the draft, we had an opportunity to bring in another good football player that we thought could help us. And I believe the trade was our 6th, their 7th, and it was a flop, not the back end of the draft. Now go ahead with the rest of your question.
The rest of the question, it's kind of my point. He doesn't have necessarily the skill set that wows a lot of people. That he didn't get much action with the Saints after you left last year. What is it about him that you like? He played 91% of the snaps yesterday, made a nice catch. What are the traits about Adam Troutman that you do like?
Yeah, I would say exactly what you're getting. In other words, there's certain things he does well. I think he's got a good feel in zone coverage. I think he's a good blocker. I think he's smart. We felt with Dulcich, we felt with Manhurts, there was a role for each one of these players, and certainly with Adam, we drafted him out of Dayton. We kind of knew exactly what we were getting, and there's something to be said for that. In other words, sometimes when you're game planning, putting together a plan, what can be frustrating is if you don't know what you're getting week to week from a player. But I was pleased. Look, his pitch count was higher yesterday, not as high a few weeks back, but the catch he made was important. He is a smart player. Yeah, we're glad we have him. And I'm glad we didn't have to give up the back end of our draft to get him.
Very good.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Hey, Sean, what has the film shown on how Garrett Bowles has progressed throughout the season up to yesterday?
Well, look, he's extremely athletic, man. He played his butt off yesterday, had a tough assignment. We knew that was going to be a challenge. He was going up against one of the better defensive players. And to his credit, when we watched the tape, man, he battled. You know, we did a handful of things over there to help slow down Miles, but he's experienced, he's athletic, and that the chemistry of that room is really changed, and it's really been an asset for our club. One more question, that's it.
Go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, Sean, you were asked about DJ Jones a few minutes ago. I was wondering, I want to ask you about the defensive line as a whole. Just how do you think they have played through this winning streak?
I think they played well, and they played some good fronts. I mean, that offensive line yesterday, those guys inside were really good. One of the better offensive lines we've seen. It's hard to have success as a team if your guys up front in both sides of the ball, the trenches, as we like to say, if they're not at least neutralizing or playing up to the level of their opponent. And so I think we've gotten real good play from that defensive front, and Marcus does a great job coaching them. They play hard. There's a rotation, and they're sore when the games are over with. It's not easy work, but I'm pleased with how they're playing. Thank you.